The massive chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with quiet energy. 12 different alien species sat in a circle around a glowing table that showed a map of the galaxy. Each species looked different. Some had scales, others had fur, and many had parts humans couldn't even name. In the center of the table spun a small blue planet, Earth. Supreme Arbiter Zilthan stood tall on 4 legs. His purple skin shimmered as he spoke. "We are here to decide the fate of the humans," he said, in a deep voice that echoed through the chamber. Admiral Krex laughed. He was a Zephyrian, tall and thin with silver skin that looked like metal. "Those little creatures can barely reach their own moon. They still use bullets and bombs. My fleet could destroy them in days." Several council members nodded in agreement. The humans seemed so weak compared to the great powers of the galaxy. But Keeper Dao, an old Vorthan with grey scales covering his ancient body, raised his hand slowly. Everyone looked at him with respect. He had lived for over 500 years and had seen many species rise and fall. "I have studied the humans for 50 of their years," Dao said carefully. "Yes, their technology is simple, but they have something else, something we might not understand." "What could they possibly have?" asked Admiral Krex with a sneer. "They can't even travel to other stars." Dao's old eyes looked sad. "They have spirit. They have a will to fight that I have never seen. In their short history, they have fought each other constantly. They know war in ways we have forgotten." The other council members shifted in their seats. Most of them had been at peace for centuries. Their wars were distant memories. "A species that fights itself cannot fight us," said General Vorth, a Zephyrian, with scars across his face. "They are divided and weak," Dao shook his head. "When their world is threatened, they become one. I have seen it in their histories. When something threatens all humans, they forget their differences." Supreme Arbiter Zilthan raised his hand for silence. "We will vote now. All those in favor of allowing the Zephyrian invasion." One by one, 11 hands or claws or tentacles rose into the air. Only Keeper Dao kept his hand down. 11 to 1, Zilthan announced. "Earth is declared expendable for the greater good of the galaxy. Admiral Krex, you may proceed with your invasion." Admiral Krex smiled, showing teeth like sharp metal. "My fleet is already moving. In one solar rotation, Earth will belong to the Zephyrian Empire." As the council members began to leave, Keeper Dao sat alone at the table. He stared at the small blue planet spinning in the hologram. "Forgive us," he whispered to the empty chamber. Far away on Earth, Lieutenant Commander Joe stared at his radar screen. He rubbed his tired eyes and looked again. The screen showed dozens of objects moving toward Earth from beyond the edge of the solar system. "General Park!" Joe called out. His voice cracked with excitement and fear. "We have multiple contacts. Approaching from beyond Neptune, they're moving fast." General Park hurried over to the radar station. He was a short man with grey hair and kind eyes that had seen too many wars. "How many?" he asked. "At least 40 ships, sir, maybe more. They're bigger than anything we've ever built." General Park felt his heart pound in his chest. They had always wondered if humans were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. "Alert the President," he ordered. "Send word to all defense stations. This is not a drill." As alarms began to sound across the Earth Defense Command Center in Seoul, General Park looked out the window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, strangers were coming to their world. He didn't know about the Galactic Council's vote. He didn't know that most of the galaxy had decided Earth was expendable. He only knew that his world was in danger. "Whatever comes," he said quietly, "we'll be ready." In the depths of space, Admiral Krex's fleet moved through the darkness like a school of metal fish. Each ship was 5 times larger than Earth's biggest battleship. Inside the command ship, Admiral Krex looked at Earth on his screen. "Soon," he said to his officers, "we will add another world to our empire. This should be simple." None of them imagined that in just a few months they would be running for their lives. None of them knew that they were about to meet humanity's greatest strength, their refusal to give up. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could do when they fought with nothing left to lose. The dark shapes appeared against the stars like giant black knives. Admiral Krex's fleet had arrived at Earth's doorstep. Their ships were massive, each one the size of a city, covered in smooth, dark metal that seemed to eat light. Earth's defense stations looked tiny next to them. The human ships were small and rough, built from steel and powered by simple fusion engines, but they didn't run away. From the command center on Luna, Captain Min watched the alien fleet on her screen. Her hands shook slightly as she counted the enemy ships, 42. Each one could probably destroy her entire station. "Attention, primitive species of Earth," came a voice that filled every radio channel. Admiral Krex's words were cold and sharp. "This is your only warning. Give us your world now. If you fight, we will destroy everything. Every city, every person, everything." Captain Min looked around at her crew. Young faces stared back at her. Some looked scared, others looked angry. All of them looked ready to fight. She pressed the button to reply. Her voice was steady and strong. "This is Earth Defense Force. You want our planet, then you'll have to come and take it." The first battle began instantly. Zephyrian ships fired beams of purple light that cut through space like swords. Where the beams hit, metal turned to gas. Earth's railguns answered back. They shot metal slugs so fast they glowed white-hot. The first human ship died in seconds. The second lasted longer. The third took one of the alien fighters with it, but the humans did something the Zephyrians didn't expect. They didn't line up in neat rows like a proper space battle. Instead, they scattered like ants. Some human ships hid behind asteroids, waiting to ambush passing aliens. Others used nuclear bombs as weapons, not to hit the enemy directly, but to create walls of radiation that the aliens had to fly around. Lieutenant Jun piloted a small fighter that was no bigger than a car. His ship was fast but weak. One hit would kill him, but he knew something the aliens didn't: how to use Earth's garbage to win. "All fighters, follow me," he called over the radio. He flew straight into a field of old satellites and space junk that surrounded Earth. The alien ships were too big to follow him. The Zephyrians tried to shoot the human fighters hiding in the junk field, but every missed shot destroyed another piece of debris. Soon, thousands of metal pieces were flying everywhere like bullets. Major Yun commanded a small group of human cruisers. Her plan was simple but crazy. "Wait for my signal," she told her. "Ships. We're going to ram them." The Zephyrians saw the human ships coming straight at them. They prepared to shoot, thinking the humans had lost their minds. At the last second, Major Yun's ships fired their engines in reverse. They stopped just in front of the alien ships and released clouds of tiny metal balls. When the aliens shot at them, the beams hit the metal balls first. Each tiny piece exploded like a grenade. On Earth, President Kim stood in a room full of world leaders. Every nation on Earth was watching. Every person knew their world was being invaded. "My fellow humans," the president began. On every screen, in every language, her words went out to 7 billion people. "Today, strangers have come to our home. They want to take everything from us: our families, our freedom, our future." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "We have fought each other for thousands of years. We have divided ourselves by race, by nation, by religion. But today we are not Korean or American or Chinese or Nigerian. Today we are human. And this is our home." On screens around the world, people heard her words. In Tokyo, a businessman stopped on the street to watch. In New York, children in a school library listened. In Lagos, farmers looked up from their work. "Every person on Earth is part of this fight," the president continued. "We face an enemy with better weapons. They have bigger ships and stronger shields, but they don't have what we have. They don't have the fire that burns in human hearts when someone threatens our children." In space, the battle continued. Captain Min's defense station was damaged, but still fighting. Half of her railguns were gone, her shields were failing, but she kept shooting. "Captain," called Lieutenant Cho from the radar station. "The aliens are backing away." It was true, the Zephyrian ships were pulling back. They had destroyed many human ships, but they had lost some too. More importantly, they had learned something they didn't expect. Admiral Krex stared at his battle reports. The humans should have been easy to defeat, but they fought like nothing he had ever seen. They used tricks. They didn't follow rules. They didn't fight fair. One of the human fighters had actually crashed into his ship's shield generator just to disable it. The pilot had died, but now that whole section of Krex's fleet was vulnerable. "Sir," called his second-in-command, "should we continue the attack?" Admiral Krex looked at the small blue planet spinning below them. Such a tiny world, such small ships, but these humans. "Pull back," he ordered. "We need a new plan." He didn't know it yet, but this was his first mistake. He had given the humans time to prepare, time to get angry, time to remember who they really were when someone threatened their home. The first battle was over. The war had just begun. The Zephyrian dropships fell from the sky like burning meteors. They landed in perfect formations across Earth's continents. Admiral Krex had planned everything perfectly. His ground forces would sweep across the planet in days. The first landing zones were quickly secured. Zephyrian soldiers marched out in neat lines, their silver armor shining in the sunlight. Their plasma rifles hummed with deadly energy. This should be easy. Major Vorth led the advance into New Geneva. The city looked empty, too empty. His soldiers moved carefully down the wide streets, their boots echoing off the buildings. "Where are all the humans?" asked Sergeant Kex, turning, his head to scan the windows above. "Probably hiding in fear," Major Vorth replied. "These creatures know they cannot win." That's when the city exploded around them. Human fighters poured out of subway tunnels, basement windows and storm drains. They came from everywhere at once. Colonel Han had spent weeks preparing the city for this moment. Every street corner was a trap. Every building was a fortress. The fighting was brutal and strange. The humans didn't line up for a proper battle. They hit and ran. They used the city itself as a weapon. Private Lee threw a homemade bomb from a third-floor window, then vanished back into the building. Sergeant Wan led a squad through the sewers, coming up behind the aliens when they least expected it. But what shocked the Zephyrians most was how the humans fought. Even when wounded, they kept shooting. A human soldier with one leg blown off still crawled forward with a grenade. They didn't know when to quit. "Fall back! Fall back!" Major Vorth screamed into his radio. Half his unit was gone. The neat streets of New Geneva had become a nightmare of smoke and fire. Captain Vorth watched from his command post as the last Zephyrian units retreated from the city. His face was pale. He had lost more soldiers in 1 hour than in his last 10 campaigns. "Report to Admiral Krex immediately," his aide told him. "He wants answers." On the command ship, Captain Vorth stood before Admiral Krex. The Admiral's eyes glowed with rage. "Explain to me how a primitive city defeated our best units," Krex demanded. "Sir, these humans, they don't fight like soldiers," Vorth said slowly. "They fight like wild animals. They use poison gas. They booby-trap their own dead. When we wounded one, 3 more would drag him away while shooting at us." "Are you saying our forces are weak?" Krex's voice was dangerous. "No, sir. But these humans show no fear, no mercy. They fight with a rage I have never seen. Even when dying, they try to take us with them." In a hidden laboratory deep under Seoul, Dr. Park worked with shaking hands. She had managed to get a Zephyrian weapon from the battlefield. The metal was still warm from the dead alien's grip. "Are you sure about this?" asked General Song, watching her work. "If it explodes—" "It won't," Dr. Park said, carefully opening the weapon's casing. "Look at this. Their plasma technology uses charged particles accelerated through magnetic fields. It's advanced, but it's just science. We can understand it." She connected cables to different parts of the weapon, her laptop screen filled with numbers and diagrams. "See?" she pointed at the screen. "They use crystals to focus the energy. We can't make crystals like these yet, but we can use our own electronics to control the plasma." "How long until we can reproduce these weapons?" General Song asked. "Give me a week," Dr. Park replied. "Maybe less." Far away in the Galactic Council chambers, Keeper Dao watched the battle reports with growing concern. The images from Earth showed something no one had expected. The humans weren't just defending, they were destroying Zephyrian equipment faster than it could be replaced. Their losses were terrible, but they didn't seem to care. "Keeper Dao," called a young aide, "the Council is asking for your assessment." Dao's scales rippled with worry. "Tell them this. We have made a terrible mistake. These humans don't fight like normal beings. They fight for something we don't understand." He pulled up images from Earth's history on his screen. Humans fighting other humans in countless wars. Always fighting, always surviving. "Look at this," he said to himself. They've been fighting each other for thousands of years. Every city on their world has been a battlefield at some point. War is in their blood. Another image showed human parents protecting their children, soldiers carrying wounded friends to safety, people helping strangers in danger. They fight for love, Dow whispered, for their families, for their future, not for territory or resources like us, for ideas we can barely understand. He thought about the vote that had doomed Earth. 11-1. He had been the only voice warning them. We thought they were weak because they fight each other, he said to the empty chamber. But we were wrong. They fight each other because they refuse to kneel. That is their strength. On Earth, the war was changing. The humans were learning. Fast? Too fast. Every captured Zephyrian device became a new weapon in their hands. Every failed attack taught them something new. Major Kim crouched in the ruins of what used to be a school. Her unit had just driven off another alien patrol. Around her, 12-year-old children helped reload weapons and carry supplies. How much ammo left? She asked. Enough for 2 more fights, replied Corporal Jun. Maybe 3 if we're careful. Major. Kim nodded. The children looked at her with trusting eyes. They didn't understand how bad things were. They only knew that the adults would protect them. We'll need enough for a 12 fights, she said quietly. Keep looking. Above them, Zephyrian ships still blocked out the sun. But every day there were fewer of them. Every day the humans grew stronger. The invaders were beginning to learn what they had awakened, but it might already be too late. 6 months had passed since the first Zephyrian ships appeared in Earth's sky. The war had changed everything. The world that Admiral Krex thought would fall in days was still fighting, still winning. In a hidden base in Antarctica, Commander Chen received an encrypted message. The signal came from deep space, from species the humans didn't even know existed. This is unexpected, said Dr. Moon, reading the message. It's from something called the Althari. They say they want to help us. The message was simple but shocking. The Althari had been conquered by the Zephyrians 50 years ago. Their world was now a slave planet, but they had learned to hack Zephyrian computers. They're sending us enemy battle plans, Dr. Moon explained. Ship movements, weapon designs, everything. Commander Chen smiled for the first time in months. Send them our thanks, and ask them what else they need from us. The helping hand came from another source too. The Kethar were a proud warrior race who had refused to join the Galactic Council. They lived at the edge of known space and fought anyone who came near their borders. Captain Yoon was working in the shipyard when a massive alien vessel appeared. It wasn't Zephyrian. This ship looked like it was made of gold and steel, covered in spikes and weapons. Humans of Earth came, a deep voice from the ship. We are the Kethar. We have watched your war. You fight like true warriors. We offer you a gift. The Kethar ship dropped large containers onto the planet. Inside were shield generators unlike anything humans had ever seen. The technology was centuries ahead of Earth's science. Why are you helping us? Asked General Park. Because the Zephyrians once invaded our space, the Kethar commander replied. We drove them back. But you are doing something we never could. You are beating them. For this, you have our respect. Lieutenant Kim strapped herself into the cockpit of her new fighter. The ship was different from anything she had ever flown. It had human engines, Althari navigation systems and Kethar shields. It was fast, deadly, and nearly impossible to kill. This is Dragon Leader, she called over the radio. Beginning patrol over New Tokyo. The city below was scarred from months of fighting, but it was still free, still human. Dragon Leader, we have incoming Zephyrian fighters, came the voice from control. 12 ships moving fast. Copy that, Lieutenant Kim replied. All dragons follow me. Time to show them what we've learned. The human fighters rose to meet the enemy. 6 months ago, the Zephyrians would have won this fight easily. But 6 months ago, the humans didn't know how aliens thought. Lieutenant Kim watched the enemy formation on her screen. They're using Pattern 7, she told her squadron. Hit their left wing first, they'll turn right into our trap. The battle lasted minutes. When it was over, all 12 Zephyrian ships were destroyed. Not one human ship was lost. Their formation just fell apart, reported Lieutenant Jun over the radio. It was like they didn't know how to adapt. Lieutenant Kim smiled inside her helmet. That's because they never learned to fight like us. Send word to all units. The sky above New Tokyo is ours again. On the Zephyrian command ship, Admiral Kreck stared at reports that made no sense. His forces were losing, badly. Species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were being beaten by creatures who had been in space for less than 100 years. "How many ships did we lose today?" he asked his aide. 47, sir, and we shot down only 3 human fighters." Admiral Krex's hands shook as he read the numbers. In 6 months, he had lost more ships than in his previous 20 years. "Cav Conquest, sir," called his communications officer. "We're getting reports from other sectors. The humans are attacking our supply bases. They're hitting targets we thought were secret." How? How do they know where our bases are?" The officer looked nervous. "Sir, I think someone is helping them. The attacks are too precise, too well planned." Admiral Krex realized then how badly he had underestimated these humans. They weren't just fighting. They were making friends, building alliances, turning his own empire against him. Far away in the Galactic Council chambers, Keeper Dao was not surprised by the reports from Earth. He had warned them. He had tried to stop this. "You should have listened to me," he said to the other council members. They sat in silence watching the holographic displays show Zephyrian defeats across the galaxy. "How are we to know?" asked Supreme Arbiter Khan. "They seem so primitive." "That was your mistake," Dao replied. "You looked at their tools and ignored their hearts. You thought they were prey, but predators know predators, and these humans are the greatest hunters in the galaxy." On Earth, President Kim stood on the balcony of the rebuilt presidential palace. The sky was clear of alien ships for the first time in months. Not because the war was over, but because the humans now controlled it. "Minister Yong," she called to her aide, "what's the status of our colonies?" "We've established bases on Mars and Europa, Madame President. Our forces are pushing toward the Zephyrian home system." President Kim nodded. 6 months ago they were fighting for survival. Now they were taking the fight to the enemy. The tables had turned. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy was about to learn that when you attack Earth, you don't just fight for a planet. You fight for a species that has never known defeat. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 12 species that had existed for thousands of years sat in stunned silence. The holographic display showed something they thought impossible: Admiral Krex's fleet running away from Earth. Admiral Krex himself stood in the center of the hall. His silver skin had turned gray. His proud shoulders were bent with defeat. Around him the council waited. "Admiral," Supreme Arbiter Zilthan finally spoke, "give us your report." Krex's voice was soft, like a broken whisper. "We have retreated from the human system. My fleet, what remains of it, has withdrawn completely." The council members shifted in their seats. The Zephyrians had conquered 100 worlds. They had never been defeated. "The humans," Krex continued, his voice getting even quieter, "they are not what we thought. They are not what anyone could imagine." Captain Vorth, standing beside his admiral, spoke up. "They don't just fight to win. They fight with their hearts, with anger, with love. We had better weapons, better ships, more soldiers. But they had something we don't understand." Keeper Dao nodded slowly. He had warned them. He had been the only one to vote against the invasion. Now his worst fears had come true. Before anyone could speak, the hall filled with light. A new hologram appeared. President Kim of Earth stood before them. But something was different. She wasn't angry. She wasn't threatening. She was offering something the council hadn't expected. "People of the galaxy," President Kim began, her voice calm and clear. "The war is over. Earth has won, but we are not here to conquer." The council members looked at each other in confusion. Winning species always demanded territory. They took slaves. They made demands. "To the Zephyrian soldiers who fought against us," President Kim continued, "we offer you safe passage home. We will treat your wounded. We will feed your hungry. War is over." Admiral Krex's eyes went wide. His species had killed millions of humans. They had bombed cities. They had tried to take everything. "To the people who helped us, the Althari, the Kethar, and others, you have our friendship forever. To those who voted for our destruction, we offer forgiveness. Earth wants cooperation, not conquest." The hologram faded. The hall was silent again. Then the great doors of the council chamber opened. Dr. Song walked in wearing a simple blue dress. She was the first human to ever enter these halls. Every eye in the room watched her. She was not afraid. She walked, sat to the center of the room, and stood where only the most powerful beings in the galaxy had stood. "My name is Dr. Song," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I speak for Earth and all humanity." Her voice was strong but not harsh, confident but not boastful. "We did not fight just to survive," she explained. "We fought to prove something. Every being, every species, every world deserves to exist. You tried to take away our right to live. We showed you that right cannot be taken." She looked at each council member in turn. "We don't ask for your territory. We don't want your gold. We ask only for our voice to be heard. We want to be part of this galaxy, not its conquerors." Keeper Dao stood up slowly. His old body moved carefully, but his voice was strong. "I propose that Earth be granted full membership in the Galactic Council." One by one, every council member raised their hand. Even the Zephyrian representative, who had lost everything, voted yes. The vote was unanimous. As Dr. Song took her seat at the council table, Keeper Dao smiled for the first time in years. He had been right about these humans. They were special. General Park stepped forward next. He wore his military uniform, but his smile was peaceful. "The Earth Defense Force has a new mission," he announced. "We will protect any species that cannot protect itself. No world will face invasion alone." Supreme Arbiter Zilton spoke for everyone. "The Council accepts Earth's proposal. From this day forward, we are not just allies, we are family." In the months that followed, everything changed. Earth shared its technology freely. Human doctors worked on alien worlds. Human teachers helped other species learn. Human soldiers protected those who needed protection. The species that had once seemed weakest had taught the galaxy its greatest lesson. Strength wasn't just in weapons or ships or conquering others. True strength came from the willingness to fight for what was right, from never giving up, from standing together when evil threatened. Earth had fought for their freedom, and in doing so they had made the whole galaxy more free. The stars were no longer divided. They were united, and at the center of it all, a small blue planet spun peacefully, knowing it was no longer alone in the darkness. Humanity had not just survived. They had shown the galaxy how to live.